Welcome to the Workforce Situation Room, where we spotlight some of the promising and innovative solutions that address some of our most pressing workforce and economic challenges, getting in the way of our mission at Workforce Solutions Borderplex. That mission is to power the people with the tools and opportunity to reach their potential in the workforce, and ultimately, our goal is to develop area businesses and the economy. I'm Bianca, your host, and I stand alongside our ladies of leadership at Workforce Solutions Borderplex with Leila Melendez, our CEO, Alma Aranda, Workforce Development Director, and Karina Castillo, our Senior Research Analyst. In this room, we all believe every situation has a solution. Here's the situation.
One year. COVID has disrupted work in organizations across our country, state, and region. But for the Borderplex community, we knew this could be devastating for some of our small businesses and employers. As we know, in this area, over 70% of our regional businesses, they're considered small businesses, and they're the heart and soul of economic development and opportunities in our Borderplex region. Certain industries, though, and occupations suffered more than others, and we see that directly with the data. COVID further emphasized and revealed not only the fissures of socioeconomic disparity, but the gaps in technology in the 21st century, which is not something we'd expect at this point in our lives. Here's what we knew we had to tackle, which I want to start with you, Alma. Job losses. That's something that we've never seen before. Tell me what your initial reaction was when you started seeing those numbers, those graphs, those charts from Karina with the unemployment reports.
Yeah, absolutely. So when the impact of the claims started coming in and we saw that they were, in the thousands and it just kept growing and it was week after week, we knew that there really wasn't a system set in place to be able to manage that. But already we had been looking at what industry sectors were growing, what should be growing, what do we need to kind of focus on. So even prior to COVID, we already had some concerns. There were some red flags. And just like you mentioned, all of the small employers, what industries were they in also. And we knew that it was service related. So just knowing the educational attainment challenges that sometimes our region faces, plus that coupled with the industries, those occupations, we knew that we were going to be facing a really, really big challenge as this thing continued. What I don't think that we realized is how lasting COVID was going to be. Back in March, we weren't sure if it was going to be, stay home order for 2 weeks, and then everything's going to be good and all of that. And that's really, as we saw that kind of progress, that's when we knew in order to kind of be able to sustain occupations, we needed to help the employers.
And we obviously thought 2 weeks, and this is going to end, and we'll come back to our offices. But then 2 weeks turned to 4 weeks. 4 weeks turned to a month. Here we are a year later. What started surfacing in terms of technology that we saw right away?
Well, I think before, and even surely at the very beginning of COVID, but certainly before COVID, is I think technology was considered a choice. It was a choice of whether or not you wanted to use technology. And COVID proved the longer it stayed, COVID is no longer a choice, it's a necessity. Not only for businesses, but for individuals, for families, for students, for everybody, every sector really needed to embrace and utilize technology. And so how do you go literally overnight from having avoided, ignored, whatever technology to learning it and adapting to it and embracing it and maximizing it? That's not an overnight type of thing for anyone. So that was one of the biggest hurdles is people were frightened, aside from the public pandemic, the economic impact. You had all these other layers happening. And one of those layers was, I got to learn too. On top of all of this, I have to learn something. And those were just some of the additional pressures that were happening. And when it comes to businesses, having grown up here, I mean, part of what makes any community very unique is those small little boutique small businesses that don't use technology. They're old school, low tech. And maybe that's what gives them character. And that's what you love about going to Barron Supermarket or Bowie Bakery or Chico's Tacos because, and I need to take cash or I need to do this or they don't have an online menu, but you're going to go anyway. So, and that's what made them so cute up until COVID. But because of COVID, you don't want them to go away. So what did they need now to stay alive and to stay alive for forever? They needed some technology. They needed to reach us at the curb,
That's right. I mean, I remember there was a restaurant who had a poster board on their window saying like, honk. And at that it was in Spanish. It was like, honk and we'll come out and take your order, because it was only curbside. And we joked about it, but we also realized how many of those businesses are really not going to be able to sustain themselves during this phase. And you add the customer experience factor. As people stay at home, you realize, hey, I do want to use DoorDash or Uber. I don't want to go outside. I want curbside.
Yeah.
All those things. And what we saw was that the big businesses, the franchises, the corporations, they were ready to do that. They rolled that out. But what were we going to do with all the small business employers?
So, I mean, on a business standpoint, right off the bat, from either honking or businesses starting to shut their doors or close temporarily signs, everything, we could see just on that aspect the trigger and how that was impacting the job loss. But Karina had a data look of it. Can you tell us, just by looking at the graphs, you're taking a bird's eye view of what's going on with the economy. We're getting regular reports, but what opened your eyes when you started seeing these unemployment reports? What was the biggest, oh my God moment?
I was going to almost to cry when I was looking the data from March to April. You will see we were at 5.4% unemployment rate in March. In April, changed to 14.9%, almost 15% unemployment rate. There was 20,000, we have 20,000 unemployed people. In March, it jumped to 52,000 people unemployed. It was more than 30,000 people that need our help. That's why it was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? We need to start with initiatives. And now we're going to talk about the DTS program. And this is going to be maybe Alma and Leah will give you more details about what is happening with this. And also we have information as to which occupations or which individual has had the most impact. The food or restaurant, the people that has the lower wage is the one who was the most impacted. And also we need to make sure all these people that were unemployed, maybe they won't come back to the same job. We need to re-skill them. We need to re-skill the employees, and we need to also teach the employers how to be utilizing digital solutions to be able to have the employer and the employees.
So we're dealing with a sudden spike within a month of up to 15% unemployment. You're saying 50,000 was the number of people that lost their job?
Yes, 52,000, jumped to 52,000. Mm-hmm.
So 52,000 people are jobless. I don't know, that quantifies to how many families, right? So that's more than 52,000 people impacted. Then you're dealing with, aside from the car honking and all that, you're dealing with businesses, boutiques that don't even know what's going on. Like, how do we even convert? This 2 weeks is going on to be too long. And then we're also realizing that the technology aspect that we had kind of taken for granted because we're in this office, we have technology, we have an IT department that hooks us up with everything, but suddenly they really don't have the technology.
And we had recognized that there's a digital divide and a digital literacy gap, even like I said before. But when all of this came about, and like Leila was mentioning, we knew that there's no choice of integrating technology. This is a survival factor now. And so that is really how the concept of digital transformation solutions was born. So through our partnership that we had with Microsoft, we came up with the concept of what if we got these consultants who, this is what they do, and they can go and assess the businesses and talk to them and let them know and then provide support. And that really was kind of like the baby concept. And as that started to take off and we started sharing that information, we got more support.
So we know what the situation is. Job loss, businesses falling apart, and technology being the big issue. And then we're even able to see, thankfully, although there were a lot of people impacted with job loss, we're even starting to see the sectors that are impacted highest. So that almost gave us an inside look into other areas that we needed to address, right? And even the business types that we needed to address we were hemorrhaging jobs. So let's start shifting over what our solution is going to be. You mentioned partnerships. You mentioned obviously technology isn't a choice, so that's going to be our priority. We do focus on job placement, but at the end of the day, if we don't have businesses to put these people into jobs, we have nowhere to go.
Right. And that's part of our mission. I mean, the boards exist to service employers. We provide services to people, but it's really to sustain the employers. So to your point, if there's no employers, what are we going to do? And that's kind of how that happens. So just to kind of give you a little bit of context, it started off with really just a consultation type of project and pilot with Microsoft.
Okay.
So we applied with a grant from Microsoft and we were able to receive that. And as we started kind of sharing the information through Layla's network, the first one to jump on board was the city of El Paso. And Jessica did actually was like, we want to help.
Who had these conversations?
Layla.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about those convos.
So I approached the city and I was talking to them about the data that we were seeing really from a big picture perspective. I was looking at it from like the people that are on unemployment. How difficult is it going to be? How long are they going to be on unemployment? How difficult is it going to be for them and the businesses to pay their taxes? What is that going to do to blight, long-term development, etc.? But when we started getting really granular and seeing what was happening at the street level, we said, we've always known that this digital divide is there. And typically investment into a business is driven on customer demand. Well, that demand, typically it takes a while. The COVID was overnight. That customer demand went to relying on technology overnight. So as we were talking to the folks at the city, we said, yeah, we know that a lot of these businesses are closing. There were, press conferences happening. There were task force meetings, a lot of these different town halls happening. And the business people, the business owners on those calls were saying, how do I do this? How do I handle that? What about PPE? What about this? And I need to stay open. And I need, there was such desperation in those conversations. And we said, we need to help them. And we could have these town hall meetings, but at the end, in every single one of those events, a business owner and even the employee, they want to address it directly to how it impacts them. And what does this mean for me? And this is where we thought about, we need to hire a team of consultants to have one-on-one conversations specific to their business. Business owners, we don't want them to feel that they had to air all their dirty laundry. And, there's already all of this anxiety about what have we not done to be in a better position. Let's have some people have private conversations with that business, talk to them specifically about their needs and advise them and guide them and handhold them through this process. So that's why the team of the consultants was really important. And it wasn't just money being thrown at them. It was a conversation. Let's sit down. Let's talk about this. Let's help you not panic and help you move into this direction. And at the same time, learn that customer demand. What does my new customer look like now? And how do I adapt to that need? And so then we started to hire our team. And part of that training for the team, when we hired them, they didn't quote unquote hit the streets day one. We went through an onboarding and orientation, making sure that they understood what the purpose was, that they took the courses that we were going to be offering. You can't tell a business owner how to do their work if you haven't done it yourself. That was very critical for us very, very early on. If we're going to offer them classes, we need to take those classes first so that we can tell them what to expect. Was it easy? Is it hard? Is it short? Is it long? Etc. And really speak to it from that perspective. That empathy is really important as we continue to work with businesses. We want them to know that we're right there with them. So it's not just money and it's not just the solution, but it's actually walking them through a transformation.
And so, Alma, since you this is your baby, Microsoft project is your baby, and it's a bunch of other founders.
It is, yeah.
And contributors, El Paso County, City of
right.
El Paso.
I wanted to touch on that too. So one of the things that we identified that was really critical as we were working through this was, that's great. The consultant piece and that relationship, absolutely critical. But the businesses were hurting so much already. What if they can't buy that stuff that we're asking them to buy and to integrate? So that's where the county came in and said, we'll also fund you. So we went from like a baby pilot to something a little bit bigger.
How big?
Well, the county was able to provide us enough funding to give every single employer upward about $4,200 of actually purchasing power to integrate this technology.
So let's backtrack a little so that the listeners can understand what it is. So we obviously had the situation of technology businesses, and that was going to be the priority.
Right.
We realized that technology, after listening to these town halls, we're really hearing it. We're hearing the not so much the dirty laundry, but the real issues that they're dealing with on down to, how do I take an order? Like, I can't take my orders over the phone. I can't be writing on the notepad.
But
that
really
kind of thing.
important also, Bianca, is exactly what Layla said. What we were able to pivot quickly is that we saw when we're broad messaging something, there was a lot of resources that were thrown out to the community all at once. And for some reason, people just weren't picking it up. And I think it was that customization. And so we were able to quickly pivot and do that and really build that one-on-one. And not only just, because it wasn't like a quick fix Band-Aid.
Right.
The training piece is really probably one of the most parts that I think what makes this project so beautiful is
so you're saying,
the sustainability.
You're saying like there were already a lot of resources. And I actually do remember seeing billboards and signs of like $10,000 for businesses, call us. But if they don't know what to do with this money.
Exactly.
So this program, which is Digital Solutions, right? Let's just kind of put it out there. This is Workforce Digital Solutions wanted to bring in the training aspect. We're not just going to throw money at you.
It's a transformation.
Okay.
And what makes it transformative is you're taking somebody at different levels. I mean, maybe you did have technology, but what's the next step that you need?
Right.
Maybe it's e-commerce now. Or, the shop that had the poster board on the window who, needs to be able to, doesn't have a website. So, I mean, that kind of scale and agility is what made this program successful. Our target was to hit 100 businesses by March. We hit 150 businesses by the end of December.
And that just shows how important something like this is.
And the success of that was that we were able to get additional funding from the county to sustain that now through September, because COVID has not gone away. And so we saw, and the technology wasn't always new technology. It's really important to share that. We saw one of our local restaurants was printing, here in the downtown area, was printing menus when they were able to open up at a certain capacity. And, what we offered them was QR codes to save them that money. And then, digital marketing, and kind of really how to emphasize that social media and let them know that not only are you open, but you're safe. Like, highlight those things and those practices. Shortly after that, they were able to rehire people that they laid off. And it's just been going. So we've got like a bunch of success stories coming out of this, and this is growing. I think this is something that we hope that we're going to be able to kind of keep sustaining with, when there's grant opportunities, because I think this really just kind of merges everything. It's the integration of technology, which is greatly needed. It creates job occupation. It sustains the employers. And all of those really do have a lot of trickle-down effects for economic development. So I think there's a lot of partners that are kind of watching to see how this goes. But it's going really well. So,
when you go from 100 business target to 150 way before
in a couple months, really. Yeah, it was really in a couple months.
Do you remember the Ppp Fiasco?
Yes.
This was right at the beginning of it. So when you look at a PPP application, it's hundreds of pages. It's like your home loan packet. It's a ton of pages. Where do I pick it up? Oh, you don't. It's an email. It's online. Oh, how do I get online? Boom. That's X number of businesses already out of even considering. Okay. So, I'm looking at this documentation. I need to download it, upload. I need to scan back up. I need to email. I need to digital signature. What the heck are you talking about?
Right.
And then they were also asking for like a lot of financial, like years of financial data.
Done. Some businesses just, if they had a computer or a laptop, shut it down.
Immediately.
I'm going to just go back and do what I can. It wasn't even an option. And we're still there. There's talk about, is there going to be future legislation for more PPE? I don't know if it is great. We need to prepare. We need to help those businesses take advantage of that and benefit from that. So some of the solutions that we offered to some of these businesses was Adobe software so that they can download documents and they can have Adobe, their signatures, digital signatures. But how many more businesses could use that or could learn how to do that? Maybe you don't have to buy software. It's all in the cloud, or what does that mean?
And also, Layla, something that was really important. We did not make them go through hoops because of the urgency. We simplified the application as much as possible. Even though we were using city and county monies for CARES Act, we were really able to kind of advocate for the business, saying like, don't make them jump through hoops to get this assistance that's greatly needed right now. And I think that's why we were able to also move so quickly.
It's almost like the early reactive solutions to COVID, given it was such an unprecedented thing, actually caused more problems.
That's right.
More situations.
I mean,
for us
really
to deal
well
with.
intended, but in our government world, we're the compliance aspect.
Yes.
But this really kind of had to shift a lot of those things.
And I think what we were saying about going from 100 businesses to 150 so quickly not only showed the demand, but it also kind of showed everybody playing nice and entities and agencies coming together and collaborating. Absolutely. And even noticing like, hey, workforce is doing something really cool. We figured out how to navigate these issues and these situations, and they're now supporting more. So tell me a little bit about the success stories. Is there something that comes off the top of your head that like was an immediate boom, that the business not only maintained survival, but also brought jobs and helped other families?
There's one that really comes to mind, and this one happened actually just a couple weeks ago. There was a tutoring business, which right now is greatly needed. We all know kind of what's going on with education and children, right? And he was using a computer that was really, really dated. So all of his effort was to kind of really put back into the services of what he's providing his clients. But his own personal effort to make his job easier, that's not where he invested. And so when all of this started kind of happening, he had to kind of go online instead of in-person tutoring services for all these school-age children. His computer couldn't sustain it. And so obviously, we were able to get him a computer, and show him how to market and all of that. But what was really heartfelt was the training aspect. The team was able to kind of customize a curriculum of training through LinkedIn Learning. And the feedback from this business owner was that all his life he's been training people.
Yeah.
And he didn't realize how he had fallen behind. But he's in a whole new level now. And so he was able to double his clientele in a very, very short period of time.
Really?
Because of that.
Mm-hmm. So we tutored the tutor with digital solutions.
Yes, absolutely.
We boosted his business and more students,
right?
More people got educated and enriched from it. So that's like a quadruple success story, actually.
And there was also, if I can just share, there was, I personally reached out to her. There was on the news when the second kind of shutdown was happening. There was a gym owner and she was crying. It was on the news and she was crying and she was saying she's put her heart and soul into this gym and she just can't take another impact like that. Mm-hmm. And so I Googled the gym, found a number and called her on a Saturday morning and I told her, we actually have something for you. And I did. And I let her know who the partners were, including the county. And, her expression was, "This is a godsend." And so she was able to now take a lot of her training platforms online. And as we were opening up, it's an opportunity for her to expand her business because she's able to do both. Not everybody's ready to go back to the businesses, even though they're going to, likely be open, next week. But there's still a lot of people who, even just for the convenience, expect services at home. And so this is that's what's transformational as well.
So just for listeners that are understanding what digital solutions is, a business could be suffering for whatever reason. Let's take, for example, the restaurant that was doing car honking curbside. What would a digital transformation specialist, which are the employees, the team that you were talking about, do? What's the first step that happens? And tell us a little bit about what a business can benefit, how a business.
So the first thing is the consultation visit. And so they would visit with the business and have that conversation of just kind of really assessing where their level of technology is. Because we don't want, you're not going to take somebody like that to a full on-fledged e-commerce, type of website or business. But maybe for somebody like that, it's, okay, do you have, what's your digital platform like as far as marketing? Are you letting people know that you're open for business? Because that was like the big one is you don't really know who's open for business and who isn't. It became a business choice for some more than others. And the way they felt safety. I mean, because this is a health crisis that we're dealing with. And so that would be kind of the first steps. And then just kind of really going from there and saying, okay, do you need a website? Do you have a POS system? Sometimes it was even just like they were avoiding that kind of integration because they didn't have the proper accounting software. And maybe that was a solution.
Wow.
And things like that. So there's a lot of discovery that we were able to kind of find to see that there's a lot to do. There's a lot more that we can do. There's a lot more need, but I mean, every business has been really, really grateful. And one of the things that we're doing now with this next tier level of service is WSB actually has other resources. I mean, the state and WSB, we're here to serve employers. And so there's a lot more resources to these employers that I don't think that they had connected with. And so our next level of service is to connect them to those additional resources. Continued training. What else do you need? Looking at their supply chain. All of that stuff is going to be really big.
You're talking about more resources. Layla, can you tell me a little bit about, obviously this digital solutions program was a huge success, and we have a lot of businesses that have benefited, a lot of word of mouth. This buzz is going around, obviously, and we have more funding. How do we see this growing? What do we see next? I mean, and we're still at the point of uncertainty with the pandemic. Granted, things might have stabilized a little bit, but what do we see next? What's evolving from this?
So part of the work that the consultant team is doing is staying in touch with these businesses because yes, we helped you stay alive and you're getting through it. It's very important that we stay in touch with them and find where are they now? What are they doing? And then this conversation goes, where do we go from here? What did you learn as a business? What lessons have you learned? And where do you want to go now? I want to share that I am a failed entrepreneur. I started my own business back in 2014, and I had my little business plan and I had my idea of what it was going to do. And then, day one, from day one that I started to the day that it ended, my business plan completely changed. And that was just in a matter of 3 months. And that was without a crisis on it. So that's the learning experience that I want to hear back from these businesses. What did you learn about not only yourself as a business owner? What did your staff learn? But what lessons did you learn? And where do you want to go? Where do you see your business now? How different is it from at the beginning of COVID? Do you see a different opportunity? What do you have your customers changed? Maybe you now have a completely different market. And then we can take all of that and figure out what do we need to do to support them? Do we need to incorporate some long-term, lifelong learning for businesses, and not just the typical trainings that we do where we send people up for training in a class, but maybe our lesson also is how do we design different training programs for small businesses? When are they going to do that? When you're a small business owner, what possible free time do you have to learn? That's part of the initial problem, is that you never make time, but maybe now we've all learned that lesson. So these are the things that we are going to build from scratch based on what we've experienced, what we learned, what we have the future capacity to do, and what we're willing to do. And build it from scratch, design something based on what we really need.
And so we've learned a lot, and I think that this is phase 2, right, of digital solutions, the sequel. But let's say for the workforce boards and the other listeners outside of El Paso, outside of the state of Texas, what would we say to them? What advice would we give them in jumpstarting a program like this that might be interested in doing something like this?
I don't know that any other workforce boards have done something like this to this level, like really getting into providing technology support to a business. Typically, we work in the field like we see it ourselves as like a training, and definitely there's a link there. But the vision that we have and where our attention is in trying to make the business stronger. If the businesses are stronger, then they're more able to hire more people. We have the talent here. The talent is teachable. They can learn the skill. You have to have a place for them to go. And so our priorities in making sure that place to go is strong and growing. That's the business. So But I think from my advice would be to other workforce boards is if they don't already have connections, relationships with their economic development organizations, with their city and county organizations, whoever is doing local economic development work. That might be a government, that might be a council of governments, that might be an economic development corporation. Every community is different, but somebody is doing local grassroots business retention and expansion, chambers of commerce, etc. So if a workforce board doesn't have those relationships, knock on the door. This is a really great conversation starter. And then offer yourself, how can a workforce board help? When we first started thinking of how can we help businesses, it's been, how can we help you hire people? How can we help you take the burden off of the cost of wages? We know labor costs are the biggest line item. How do we take that burden off? Let's talk about subsidized wages. Let's talk about training costs, etc. So then you start to wedge yourself into, from the perspective of like, how can we help? How can we help? How can we create something that's not already on the books? Be open to new ideas. Listen to the gaps that are in the community and see if you can play a role. You might not always be able to, but see if you can and see if you can get a little bit creative with it. And then go from there. Design it based around your community and what you need.
So, I mean, first and foremost, I think for me, one of the not lessons learned, I think I've always known this, but it just completely made me even more passionate and committed, is these businesses, when you think of some of the technology that they were lacking, just goes to show how resilient they are prior to COVID, right?
True.
You know, I mean, they're business owners, you know, and with whatever limitations that they had to work with, they still had to establish a business. So first and foremost, and that's the approach that we used with them. Like, there's no shame game here, right? It was just like, you're great. Let us help you now navigate through this and be able to thrive even after. For me, sharing these lessons, when I see the economic recovery strategies that are going to be at the federal level, at the state level, regional level, this should be integrated in all of that. Mm-hmm. Because even giving an employer a loan, it fixes the immediate need to, you know, to help them pay the lease or the utilities or even avoid layoffs. But without that integration of the technology, just because of the way that the world is now, that acceleration of digital IT acumen is expected. And so for me, I think that should be almost a mandatory requirement. Like, if you're going to get a loan, you need to have DTS. You know what I mean? No, well, not even that. I mean, just have that piece, have that conversation with them. Like, so that it's not just like a Band-Aid that's going to eventually just delay the unavoidable, because that is where we are right now. That's how I see it.
Very good. Very good advice.
No, just to add, now with this pandemic, now the businesses are forced to use technology in order to keep the business and grow the businesses and continue growing. Because before they were never like maybe creating their own website. And I don't have money to do my website. Now with this consultant team, you know what we are telling them it's not expensive. You only have these and you can create it and then you will have more customers. Now they're forced to use technology and it's helping them and helping the employees.
I think those are all very good pieces of advice. I think we got the solutions down. So thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the road to redevelopment of our workforce and economy. We'd love to hear your situations, share your solutions, or collaborate with communities to magnify the mission to power the people and the workforce. We don't always have a choice in the situations we face, but you do have a choice in subscribing to Solutions. Join the Workforce Situation Room on your favorite podcast platform and hit subscribe.